Hi, I'm Kate Barrett, the founder of Shining Light Media and a member of the DMA Email Council. The Email Council is here to really help everybody with best practices in email marketing, making sure that we really champion this amazing marketing channel. And of course, we're here to really be that first line of defense and lobby against any government changes that may affect the industry. So as a council, we really do live and breathe email marketing. And I'm joined today by Simon Hill from Extravision. And what we would like to do is really give you a little insight into one of our DMA Email Council meetings. And this month we had a fantastic discussion all about mobile email. So Simon, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first before we dive into all of the amazing points that came up in our last council meeting.
Hi, I'm Simon from Extravision. We're an email marketing agency based out of Manchester, and I've been kind of working in email probably for about 10 or 12 years now, and I've been on the council for about 7 or 8 years. And as Kate said, yeah, last month we had a great discussion about kind of email on mobile and responsiveness, and whether it's actually kind of worth the effort that people put in to actually create a responsive design for their emails. So Kate, what's your kind of initial thoughts on this?
Well, I think that there were some really, really interesting points that came up. And as usual with our council meetings, we got into a little bit of a debate about it. And I think the conclusion that we came to was amazing. So we're going to sort of put a pin in that and come back to that at the end of the video and tell you that conclusion. But I think what's really, really interesting to kind of set the groundwork for where we are and where this discussion started from. There are some really interesting statistics that have come out in the last few months, so particularly from Litmus. So Litmus have shown a 500% increase over the past 4 years in the number of people opening emails on a smartphone or tablet, for example. And Apple, on Apple iPhone, is the #1 email client that people are using as well. So I think that the mobile arena, the whole topic around mobile, is a really, really key discussion to be having and a key consideration to be making for anyone who is strategizing their email programs at the moment, or even actually creating a new email template. So that's kind of where our discussions started in the last council meeting. And I know that we talked about some of the key issues for emails when they display on a mobile device. So before we get into sort of the main question of should all emails be mobile responsive and come to an answer on that, Simon, do you want to talk us through some of those key issues that we find when we're looking at emails on a mobile device generally?
Well, that's right. Kind of one of the questions that was kind of posed at the council was kind of what are the problems with kind of email and mobile? And, you know, it became kind of very apparent within about 5 minutes. So actually, in the current climate, there are no problems with email and mobile. If we look back kind of maybe 7 or 8 years ago when kind of smart devices were in their infancy, mobile rendering of email was pretty bad. You had some devices that would maybe kind of render some of the HTML, some devices render none of the HTML. And sometimes you'd have to kind of build in little quirks to actually get the HTML to work on the mobile device. Move forward to where we are now, rendering on mobile devices is pretty much perfect for every device that we have. Screens are getting bigger, the resolution's better than it ever has been. So in many cases, the actual rendering is better on a mobile device than it may be on your desktop. So actually, looking at emails on your mobile isn't the issue that we're talking about. We're talking about the usability of an email on a mobile. And if you receive an email on your mobile and you're on the train or you're walking down the street or between meetings, you've probably got it in one hand. So you're using one hand to then kind of browse through. If you've got an email and you need to zoom to kind of get to the click points, it's going to be very difficult with one hand. So it's mainly talking about usability and how the user would see and use the email on the device.
Absolutely. So it's exactly the same thing that we've always looked at in email in terms of making it usable on a desktop or a webmail. We're just looking at exactly the same thing, just on a smaller device. And I know that something that we do have to be aware of is for people like me with sort of slightly chunkier fingers, perhaps, and how we can actually allow them to take that action that we want. Because the key thing in any email that we're sending is we're not just sending it for the sake of sending it. We want that subscriber to do something, to take an action. So we want to make sure that we don't prohibit that on a mobile device, especially seeing as so many people are now using mobile devices to open their emails. So I think that all of those are really, really great points. So here we're really starting to break it down, and we're looking at the difference between usability and responsive design. So when we look at those two elements, I think what we're really looking at here is that a responsive design is just one tool that we can use to make our emails responsive. So what's your thoughts on that, Simon?
That's it. Responsive design is a design technique for making your emails more usable on a mobile, in the same way as mobile first is a design technique to make your email more usable on a mobile device. So whether you kind of go responsive or mobile first are two different design methods for achieving the same thing. It's all about usability on a mobile device.
Absolutely. So just to kind of throw it in there, what's the alternative then to a responsive design? Do you think it's having a normal HTML template design, but perhaps making it more slimline so that it fits to those smaller screen sizes, having that single column design? Is that an alternative to a responsive design in the sort of classic sense of the word, where it resizes depending on the screen size? Is that something that you think may possibly be an alternative there?
Well, that's it. I mean, you've got two kind of design approaches that you can take. You've got what do we call kind of desktop first, or you've got a kind of a mobile first, or you've got a responsive design idea. So responsive design is all about taking your desktop design and then adding some CSS in the background and changing the layout for when you see it on a mobile device. Mobile first is a much simpler approach. This is the single column approach, where you actually design it to look great on your mobile first, and then the same design then translates across the desktop and doesn't change in any way. So there's kind of two kind of trends that are coming along, really. If you look kind of previously, everybody used to design kind of for desktops. Everyone wanted to make sure their emails looked great on a desktop. And then if it looked okay on a mobile device, that was kind of, okay, it kind of works on a mobile. We're kind of happy with that. We'll kind of run with that. Now, should we be looking the other way? Should we look and say, okay, let's get it to look great on a mobile device, because that's kind of where most people are opening it. And then if it looks okay on the desktop, then that's fine. People are still going to read it on the desktop, but mobile is a place where we want it to look great first. So the question is, should we be going mobile first and making it look great on mobile, and then just kind of settling with our desktop, or would you concentrate on your desktop still and kind of have mobile as kind of the secondary screen? It all really depends, I think, on the demographic and kind of the stats you get from your email campaigns about where people are opening your emails.
I think that that's really key as well. I think it's about looking at your own statistics. What are your subscribers doing? Because, you know, what we look at for one company will be completely different for another. You know, I've seen some clients with 70, 80% of their opens happening on a mobile device, and others that are still only at 20, 30%. So it really does vary. And I think that's key if you're looking to decide whether you're going to do a desktop first design or a mobile first design or a responsive design, like you say. So I think that that is really key, to keep an eye on your statistics and your subscribers and make the decision from there. And I think that something that's also really important to talk about and just to mention at this point is that obviously so far we've talked about opens, but we also know from the statistics that are out there that although, yes, mobile opens are massively increasing, the number of people purchasing on a mobile still isn't up to the level as the number of people purchasing from a desktop or webmail device. So a lot of people may be opening their emails on their mobile, and then perhaps going back to them again at a later time when they're on a desktop or webmail device and actually completing a transaction or whatever that call to action might be. So I think that that's something really important to look at as well. You know, are your transactions coming from those desktop and webmail views, or are they actually coming from the mobile views? Because that will give you a lot of information as well to base your decision on as to what type of design is best for your business. But we also know that there are a lot of people out there who, if the email isn't usable on a mobile device, will delete it straight away. So we have to bear that in mind as well. So again, it's all about going back to your statistics, having a look at what they show you, and using that information to form your strategy going forward. So Simon, if somebody has sort of looked at all of those statistics, how do they know if a mobile responsive design, so something that resizes, now we all know that the cost of that is going to be slightly increased from a standard HTML format email. How does that increased revenue, you know, cover those additional costs? Is that going to be there? How do we know that responsive design is really worth that effort and cost?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's like everything in email, it's all about testing, test, test, and test. And the interesting thing to note, to remember, is that kind of creating a responsive design is necessarily not going to increase your open rate, because somebody has to open the email to see your responsive design. So spending lots of time and effort creating a new responsive design won't necessarily increase your open rate. So there's lots of studies been done, or kind of split test studies done, where you have your standard templates and you're kind of getting, say, a 20% open rate and a, say, 10% click-through rate. You then create a responsive version of that template, send it to the same base a month later, and people see a huge increase in the click-through rate and their open rate. And everybody goes, wow, it's a responsive design, it's amazing, like everybody should do a responsive design. But that's not true, because you've not got kind of exact comparisons here. If you've taken your standard template and you've done a redesign that was not responsive and sent that to your base, you'd probably get an uplift in clicks and opens as well, because redesigning a template generally causes an increase in opens and clicks. Because it's new, people are interested to see what's changed in kind of the new branding, etc. So how do you actually know if your responsive design is producing a real uplift, or it's just an uplift because you've changed your design? The only real way to do this is to create two designs at the same time. One is kind of a redesign but not responsive, and the other one is a responsive design. You can then split test the two and see which one gives the greater uplift. And that's really the only true way to see whether it's actually worthwhile putting effort in to the responsive design.
Yep, absolutely. It's just test, test, test again. It's the only way you're going to know if something increases or decreases your results. And even if something decreases your results through testing, that's a major learning in itself about what your subscribers react to. And I think, again, you know, coming back to what you've said about the different statistics, look at those statistics in conjunction with each other, because like you say, the template isn't necessarily going to affect your open rate because they've got to open it before they see the new template. So, you know, obviously open rate is going to come down to your subject line, your from address, and that trust within the inbox. But you're looking at those click rates, those conversions. It's about looking at those statistics in conjunction and just testing everything. So I think that's some really, really good advice there. So in conclusion, and kind of bringing us back around to our initial question of should all emails be mobile responsive? So I guess it's kind of bringing it together, and how do we balance that cost, that design, that usability for those mobile devices? And is responsive design the way to go?
Well, I think one thing to kind of remember throughout this kind of whole conversation is there are more important things in creating a responsive design. Subject line testing, for example, pre-headers, lots of different things can affect kind of open and click-through rates on your email. So, you know, people could spend kind of lots of time and effort on a responsive design when actually kind of doing a bit of split testing on a subject line could have a greater impact on your open and click-through rate. So I think it's important to put it all in kind of perspective with everything else you're doing within your email program. But I guess kind of it boils down to kind of three questions, really. Should your emails be usable on a mobile device? Well, I think kind of the answer for that is yes. Does this mean that they need to be responsive? Probably not, or not necessarily. Could it be responsive? The answer is yes, that's right. So it's going to be usable on a mobile. Could that be responsive? It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It all depends on your user base, whether you have the coders in-house to kind of produce this design, whether you're going to do a redesign of your template anyway. If you're doing a redesign of your template anyway, and you have the skills in-house to produce a responsive design, then produce a responsive design, give it a go. If you don't, try a redesign of the template, see what the uplift is, look at your demographics, see what the stats are, and keep testing and changing as you go along.
Fantastic. So it's really back to sort of everything that we've all been teaching in email marketing for quite a while. It's that relevance, it's the content, it's the testing, you know, it's looking at those statistics, and it's really listening to your subscribers and what your statistics are telling you. And I think also making sure that you have that combined customer journey. You know, another argument against a responsive template is if your website isn't responsive, there's no consistent customer journey keeping that responsive email with the responsive website. So it all has to work together as well. And that's definitely something to consider. But I love how we've sort of broken it down into those three key questions. Should you make a good job of making your email usable? Yes. Does that mean it has to be responsive? Not necessarily. Could it be responsive? Yeah, absolutely. That's a tool to use to get that usability. So I think we've kind of covered everything that we went through in our last DMA Email Council meeting. So Simon, thank you so much for being here with me today to share all of this amazing content with everybody. I'm glad that we could do it.
No, Kate, it's been great. Thanks very much.